Hi, I'm Fred Armisen. This is the Vinyl Guide. Support your local record store.
Well, hey everyone, it's Nate here with episode 289 of the Vinyl Guide, the podcast by and for record nerds. And today we are celebrating Record Store Day 2021 with the ambassador of Record Store Day and a very entertaining, humble, and artfully knowledgeable guy, Mr. Fred Armisen. Now, you probably know Fred from his time on Saturday Night Live and Portlandia, or even of any of the dozens of movies he's appeared in. But Fred is also a musician and formerly a touring musician at that. Fred's music roots go way deep, and his record and music collection is very considered and curated to his preferences and taste. We'll talk to Fred all about his music collection today, as well as the other musical aspects of his life and career, the records of his youth, the musical sketches he's written and performed in, the vinyl records he's produced, his musical preferences and collection, and heaps more. Plus, we'll discuss the Fred Armisen Record Store Day release, Parade Meeting. 3 new tracks from Fred on colored vinyl with an etching on the flip side. Available July 17th on Record Store Day. Grab one if you can. There's only 1,000 made worldwide, and they'll no doubt go fast. And to those of you new to the Vinyl Guide podcast, welcome to our humble abode. Thank you for joining us. We talk about records, collectibles, and music nerd stories here, and we literally have hundreds of episodes to enjoy, including interviews with Henry Rollins, Ian MacKaye, Bernie Grunman, Mike Watt, Andy Partridge of XTC, Jay Bentley of Bad Religion, Jazz Coleman of Killing Joke, and heaps more. Follow the Vinyl Guide podcast on your podcast app, dig into all our past episodes, and enjoy. And if you feel moved to do more, feel free to join our Patreon community at patreon.com/vinylguide. And in fact, we've got a couple of newbies to our Patreon group. Recent joiners include Steve Chase, Ben Dixon, Jed Bedouin, and Shane Robertson. Thank you so much for helping support the show. To the rest of you civilians, I always put up extra stuff on patreon.com/vinylguide, extended interviews, secret episodes, early access to interviews, and heaps more. Plus, you get the warm, fuzzy feeling of helping support the show. So, do your buddy Nate a favor. Get me a few extra burritos each month, $5, $10, or whatever you can afford. Please do it at patreon.com/vinylguide, where you get to hear the rest of the show. Well, all right, I am very excited about sharing this interview with everyone here. So let's get into it. Please enjoy our conversation with musician, comedian, record collector, and Record Store Day ambassador for 2021, Mr. Fred Armisen.
Hey.
Well, hey, Fred, how are you?
Good. How's it going?
It's going very well. We're here in lockdown in Sydney, so got nothing to do but play records and talk to people.
Yeah, I heard it's, this just, I think all around the world, it just changes and different places go into lockdown.
Yeah, we're a little bit of a victim of our own success. We were able to keep it out of the country for such a long time. We even went back to concerts and everything.
Oh yeah.
And then this whole Delta variant's really just kind of flipping everything on its end, and a lot of people aren't vaccinated because we got so complacent. So it's
Yep. Yeah. It's like the virus is kind of like sort of, okay, where can we go?
It's very clever.
Yeah.
So, hey, let me be one of the first to wish you a happy Record Store Day.
Thank you. Likewise.
Records seem to have been a big part of your life. Would I have that right?
I would say they saved my life. I think they defined my life. I think that, like, when I was a kid, that's like the first thing that had an impact on me that I don't even need to describe to you. You know the feeling, but it's something. And also, like, I hear it from other people about other things. Sometimes people talk about comic books or movies, or baseball or something. So I think everyone has a different thing. And for me, absolutely, it was records.
How did they get that level of influence in your life? Do you remember when you first kind of really got the spark for music?
Yeah. My mom bought me a Beatles record. This is like 19 73. I was in, I guess they'd call it second grade, or I don't know. It's like something like second or third grade. We lived in Brazil, and she bought me this Beatles record that came out there, but then Magical Mystery Tour. It was I Am the Walrus, where I remember it coming through the speakers and me putting my head right at the speakers. And, I didn't know anything. I mean, I was just a kid, but just hearing that drum intro really hooked me in, and I never stopped. I never stopped buying records. I mean, when you're a kid, your parents are buying your records, but that's what I would ask for my birthday. And I just kept going all through elementary school and through junior high school. It just kept on going and going.
Was it difficult for you to get records, or did you have a pretty regular supply coming in?
Oh, regular supply. Always easy. At the time, it was like department stores would have a record section, and I think it made it easy on my parents. Like it's an easy thing. They didn't have to try to figure it out. It's a very clear, hey, this is what I want.
Yeah, I've only come to realize lately that records kind of came into my life because of my father, and always buying me these records. It was moments that we shared together, but records are also a pretty good babysitter for the time. To sit your kid in front of the stereo, if you have to do other things, then at least that where they're at. Yeah,
and I imagine for a parent too, like it is a kid using their brain. They're listening to lyrics and they're listening to music. It's even though it is in its own way loud, it's also very quiet. It's a very quiet activity. I'm not saying anything. I'm just listening, and that's it. So I think that might have been the appeal too.
Did your folks realize the amount of importance you were placing on music and records at that time?
No, I don't think that. I mean, they appreciated it and they certainly didn't stop. But I wonder if they knew how deeply it was affecting me, because it really, to my core, it affected me. Because I think it didn't as much for them. I think they love music and they love records, but it wasn't an obsession like it was for me.
And what were the records that really changed the direction of your life? 3 or 4 records you could recall, like, okay, life isn't the same after you had that music.
Freedom of Choice, Sandinista, Ram. And if I'm picking a fourth one, it might be Flip Your Wig. Oh, actually, yeah, it'd be Flip Your Wig, but I got to add a fifth one. I have to add a fifth one and a sixth one. The fifth one would be The Hot Rock by Sleater-Kinney.
Okay.
And then Sign of the Times by Prince.
Okay. So these are records quite a bit further down the road from your youth. What was the record that made you want to participate? The one that made you want to, I guess, play drums? Was drums your first instrument?
Yeah, and it would be I Am the Walrus.
Okay.
I would say that fill, I do remember wanting to do that fill. I do remember imagining myself playing that fill. That something about the tempo was just right for a kid.
Yeah.
It's like, because it's a little, it's like slow enough that you can really like hear every note of that fill.
Mm-hmm. I Am the Walrus, I think, was my entry point to Beatles as well. And I think a lot of it had to do with just the playfulness of the lyrics as well.
Yeah. And the weirdness of it. Like it's in that like weird artsy zone that like, it's not quite a rock song, that it's also not totally arty, where it's just experimental. It's like right somewhere in between. Mm-hmm. And it's very British. It's such a British song.
And it's got, I don't know what is the lyrical patterns, the rhythms of it, or what iambic pentameter, or whatever it would be. It just, it hooks in very much an earworm. Okay, so right off the bat, you heard the Beatles
right away.
Right away, you're like, okay, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Did you ever have any aspirations for anything other than music, or was it just kind of music from day one?
Um, music, but also television and comedy. I always, even though that was, music was my first love, I still really did have a lot of space for, watching SNL or like Benny Hill. That was definitely like a big part of it. And to me, like even seeing the Beatles visually, they're like a very visual band too. Like
Mm-hmm.
they did videos or whatever and posed a lot. So they were like, and then later on, of course, with like Devo and the Clash and Talking Heads, like that also, it was definitely like there's a sort of like visual aspect that to me, I know it's not considered comedy, but like it's sort of being another character,
Mm-hmm.
especially in Devo's case.
Well, you seem to have a very natural fluidity between comedy and music, and you do both so well. Do you think being a drummer gave you an upper hand in terms of natural rhythm that lends itself to comedy?
It was more of an upper hand for like approaching the stage. Like there's a way you kind of like, I think, approach a drum kit where it's just all set for you. Everything is like, you could sit down at it. And there's something with going into comedy where like the other comedians, if you're in a sketch with someone there, it does feel very much like kind of like being in a band, but it's like a weird confidence that drums give you. Just because they're not noodly, like a guitar is like noodly, and you have to hope the amp works and there's like lots of notes. But with drums, it's like more of a foundation. It's like a building. So like you can sit at it, and I don't know, something with comedy feels like it just feels like you almost feel like a construction worker. Like I think I could do construction, so then maybe I could do comedy, that kind of thing.
Okay. I would imagine, again, I'm not a drummer, but being a drummer on stage, you do have this almost kind of protective wall around you.
Yeah.
But you can't, like a guitar player can hit a clam note. A guitar player can do that, but a drummer, everyone's looking to the drummer to hold it together. And I think people will notice more if the drummer's off his game than if...
No. If the drummer's off his game, you could play it off because there's so much cymbals and stuff moving around.
Okay.
It's like juggling. So it's like a guitar player is like more, vulnerable. A drummer, I messed up. There's never a time where I didn't mess up on the drums. I'm a kind of a sloppy drummer, and it's so fun to watch a drummer anyway, that if you mess up, it's almost, it's like very okay, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
As long as you stay smiling.
I would say to have a good band, you have to have a great drummer. I mean, that was
agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
So how did you make the leap from Beatles and I'll say pop into punk? Like, how did you bridge that?
So easily. Like as soon as I heard, and I skipped a lot of like classic rock that everyone else liked in high school, but as soon as I heard the Clash and Sex Pistols and bands like that, it was really easy. And I really have like a belief that like Ram and I think a lot of like later Beatles is pretty punk. It's just something about it, something about them. I think easily sort of flowed into that. And then because punk, I don't see it as like aggressive music. Like the melodies are so pretty. Like the Damned have really pretty melodies, and they all did. The Buzzcocks. So it really was like, it was like chronological. It made perfect sense to me to get into all those bands.
In your mind, do you have a definition of what punk is?
Yes, I have a very crystal clear definition of what punk is. And to me, it's the Damned. Like the Damned to me is like the perfect marriage of all the things that, because there's psychedelic music in it and stuff. So to me, they're like this ideal. I mean, I love a million other punk bands, but something with them seems very punk. And then I feel like Bad Brains is like the ultimate punk band, and I think Husker Du, and then Sleater Kinney. That route somewhere in there is like the perfect, or is like, the Clash, obviously, but like for me to talk about the Clash is like everyone knows they're great. Like I'm not, it's almost like they're almost like a Beatles, where it's like we all, love it. But to me, yeah, that's somewhere in there, somewhere in like, I think the album Strawberries, which is very like melodic, and something in there is punk in its like evolution, like it's moved, it's like that it's moved on like that. And Sandinista, I guess too. I know I just said that, we all love the Clash, but Sandinista also, that there's so much dub on that album, is like a very punk thing.
Well, what do you think is the common thread that holds them together, that defines punk, at least in your mind?
Oh man, I don't think there's a word for it. Like it just, when I hold that record, I'm like, yeah, well, this to me is punk, like I know everyone's got a different thing, but there's nothing I can place on it, because if I say Short Hair, well, then there's Dinosaur Jr. or the Meat Puppets. And, if I say that it's, an attitude, there are some punk bands who don't have an attitude at all, that they're like so laid back that it's, so I actually don't know if there's like a common thread of a word.
Mm-hmm. No, and that's fair enough.
Same thing with me. I wish there was.
I look at some records, I'm like, that's punk? That's not, I just kind of know it's a, an instinct almost.
Yeah. And it's weird. Like, there are some bands that were part of the punk movement, and I'm like, I don't think of them as punk. And then I can get really judgmental too about bands in general, where I could tell that they weren't raised on punk, or I'm just like, it's just not to my taste. Then I'm like, I don't think they were raised on punk, so this might not be for me. All the power to them, but I could, And then there are some bands that are such outsider art bands, kind of like where they're not. But then to me, I'm like, that's still a punk band to me. There's a band called Def Rain, DEF Rain, RAIN, from Texas. And I think they're like a duo. And it's pretty synthy. I don't know what they were raised on, but I'm like, I'm sorry, that's just a punk album to me. This is like a continuation of punk rock to me. I choose to see it that way. Okay. I choose to see Joanna Newsom as a punk artist. That's just me.
No, that's fine. Look, you're making me think here, because I was recently listening to Khan, Tago Mago.
Yeah.
And record 1 is melodic. Record 2 is closer to avant-garde, and it's almost like a punk attitude on that. To me, it's almost a little bit of, we're going to do what we want.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
You seem to have a very eclectic musical taste. Are there any genres of music that you tend to not prefer?
I wish I really did have eclectic taste, because, I meet people who have really eclectic taste, and I just feel like I've missed out on stuff. I mean, that's the joy of life, that like, as I get older, I'll get to like go back and like rediscover things that I just missed. There's just stuff that I've missed. I just wasn't aware of. There are bands that I missed, and, just like time periods that I'm like, there's no genre that I'm like against. I just like, somehow some stuff just passed me by. But for every genre that I pretend not to like, there are absolutely artists that I think are brilliant in those genres. And there's just stuff that like, I just don't know. I haven't been exposed to klezmer music enough, or I think there's a lot of Eastern European music. I just don't know. And there are a lot of the New York art bands I kind of only recently started hearing about. It's just taken me a while. with a lot of bands, but hopefully I'll get to hear more.
Yeah. Well, that's just kind of part of life, drinking out of a
Yeah,
fire
yeah,
hose, right? And
yeah.
there's some parts of art that you could focus on and you could appreciate at some points in your life. And then sometimes it takes a while for something to really percolate, maybe life experience, to then come back and say, oh, you know what? Okay, now I'm getting Miles Davis, or now I'm getting
Yes,
this period of Frank Zappa's work that I always just kind of stuffed to the side.
totally. And then also like life experience makes you realize also what they were trying to do.
Mm.
So then I understand them a little better. I'm like, of course, this is what the direction that they were going. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's definitely life experience for me. Like the life experience that I had was like during the 90s, I was in a band and I was so competitive with everyone that I couldn't enjoy any other bands. So now I get to go back and listen to like indie rock. And also like, I think my age also like makes me a little proud of indie rock. It's like a generational thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I always liked it, but I was just too like in my own band to be like, you know,
You saw
branching out.
everything as a competitor. Is that fair?
Yeah. When you're in your 20s, it's just like, that sucks. How come we're not signed? Everything was like that. You just, the only bands you like are the ones that sound exactly like you. So it's been really nice. I mean, it's been the last, I think, like 15 years that I've gotten back into like 90s indie rock. And, it's fun. I love it. It's so funny though, what a sound it is. Like at the time, I don't know, at the time I didn't hear, the way that music was made. Now I'm like, oh yeah, they did this common thing all the time, like octaves instead of bar chords, a microphone effect, or like, different kinds of like 1930s microphones and stuff. And I love it.
Mm-hmm. Now with Record Store Day, you've got a 7-inch single coming out. This is
it's a 12-inch single.
Oh, it's 12-inch. Okay. And it's an instrumental, is that right?
Yeah. I'm too embarrassed to be like singing. I'll do it for like parody. Like I'll put together a fake band and I'll sing in the style of someone else. But for me to sing as a person, I mean, I'm a comedian. I just, other people can do it. I am too shy to do that. So I just did instrumental. It's like bass and timbales and some drum kit.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just, it was because Record Store Day was like, you have to do a record, that I was like, oh, okay. And then I did it. And that's what I wanted it to sound like. I just love timbales so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a great instrument. And, speaking of which, there's no like newer version of Sheila E. Sheila E. was like a pop, or, is a pop singer, had a hit song with timbales in, as the main instrument up front.
Right.
So I'm like, we need some more timbale players. We need some more people with timbales up front singing a pop, top 10 song.
Right. Okay. Well, I haven't thought of that. So Sheila E. was the last timbale player.
As
major, right.
Major, like pop vocal, lead singing, and up in front of the stage, timbales. I'm sure someone out there will be like, oh, actually there's so-and-so and so, but I haven't seen it yet. I want to see it like, and the mainstream, like up front. Sheila E. is like a genius, that she's a percussionist and singer is like, I don't know. We should give her like a new kind of Nobel Prize or something.
Who are your musical heroes?
Mark Mothersbaugh,
Mm-hmm.
Sheila E., Carrie Brownstein, Mick Jones, Captain Sensible, Steve Jones, Hugh Cornwell.
Are these your heroes because of their approach to art, because of their output, because of their going against the tide? I'm looking down this list, and pretty much all of them are, I would put in the rebellious category during their time.
Yeah, but there's there's still an enjoyment of life with all those people where
Mm-hmm.
they're like actively like making music and making art, and where that's like their focal point is like this, just to make good art. And there's also like an enjoyment of it. When I think of Mick Jones, I picture him smiling. I picture Captain Sensible smiling. Like, these are all people who seem to love what they do.
Hmm.
David Byrne, for sure.
Oh, yeah. There was someone on the show recently, and I was talking to them about this moment. A lot of people that I interview, they talk about that Beatles moment on Ed Sullivan as being, their big bang, their inflection point. And I was obviously born after that, but my moment like that, and I think a lot of other people share this, is Devo on SNL. Watching them, I think they were playing Satisfaction and Jocko Homo, and I remember watching them as a young kid, and all of a sudden my brain just opened up. That classic rock that my brothers and sisters had been playing all these years was almost instantly irrelevant to me. Devo just completely opened those synapses.
Isn't it wild? Isn't it wild that like, also that it's so related to how you look at your family? Like, Devo did that for you, and you're thinking of your brothers and sisters. It's such a like, it's so weird that like music, its role is to represent you to the family. Mm-hmm. Because I wanted to freak out my parents, but I didn't want to like just to do it with classic rock with like long hair and all, the sort of like long solos and stuff wasn't shocking to them. That's not, it was on TV. It was very accepted of like, that's what rock and roll looked like. So to show up with like Kraftwerk and Devo, even the specials, I remember I played Message to You, Rudy, and like my parents being like, what is that? That is not regular rock. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's interesting that like Devo is a different kind of rebellion. It's a little bit of like, and which I love when it happens to me, by the way. I love that whenever I don't understand something that's coming out of music or pop culture, I kind of like it. I'm like, that's how it should be. The fact that I don't, I like that. It should be elusive like that. Yeah. But Devo, speaking of Devo on Saturday Night Live, the moment for me for Devo was watching them on a show called Fridays. They did, and they did Girl You Want. And Fridays was this like late night.
I remember that. Show. It was, it was on Friday nights. It was a competitor. Michael Richards was on it, I think.
Yeah, he was great. I mean, it was a great cast. I used to me and my friends loved that show. And Devo was on there, and that was, the red energy domes. And
okay.
I saw that. I was actually sick. I remember I had a cold, and like I was like sick in bed, and I had this little teeny TV, and I saw that. And like you're saying, it seemed like the answer to everything. But for SNL, I saw the specials on SNL, and that was like the greatest. That was like amazing. I was in Long Island and at home, and that was another one. And also Clem Burke on with Blondie, the drummer for Blondie. Mm-hmm. So when they played, Steve Martin was the host, when they played Dreaming, I remember Clem Burke was the way he was dressed. He had like he's like a mod. Mm-hmm. With his red drums that were all flat, and that really was like, that blew my idea of what a drummer should be. Like the common thing was like big drum kits and like a drummer kind of being, and he was like, whoosh, this premier drum set, and like he was going crazy. Mm-hmm. So that was like, that really, I think Clem Burke on Saturday Night Live is a bigger inspiration than I realized. Like I think about all these bands, but there's something about him that I think really, I never went back after seeing him. I never went back to wanting to be like, rock, this kind of drummer.
50 rototoms and
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or like, that energy that he had really sort of focused me up.
He reminds me a bit of Ringo in the fact that they have these very tight drum kits, and they come on, they do their business, economical in the sense of not overplaying. You just know that that's a person that's just gets down to business.
Yeah, they really, it's like they just push it. They just push it, and they really make use of those toms. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Definitely.
When you were on SNL, what musical guest came on that awoke your fanboy spirit?
Modest Mouse. They, I always liked them, but seeing them on that stage, it was kind of like, like I was talking about indie rock. I know that they're later than that in the 90s, but that representation on SNL, I just loved it. I loved seeing it there, I loved, it's almost like it legitimized it, and hearing it on the NBC stage was really, really cool.
Yeah. I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, but as one of the featured players, you would be able to see who's coming up weeks in advance.
Yeah.
And be like, oh my God, I can't wait for, wow. Now,
yeah.
would you then have the opportunity to write something with that band in mind?
I tried, but it didn't always work. So that's the thing about, trying to write comedy is like, for my ego, I was like, I want to be in a sketch with Feist. That would be great. But then when you write the sketch, I couldn't figure out what the actual comedy was. I got to do more on Portlandia, where I had more time to kind of have sketches where the guest was in the sketch in a very sort of harmonious way. But like at SNL, it was week by week, and it was too fast. I wasn't fast enough to come up with a good concept. So there were many sketches where I just couldn't make it happen. It was just not a funny enough sketch. The only one that worked for me is a sketch called Band Reunion at the Wedding. That was with Dave Grohl.
Crisis of Conformity.
Yeah. And it's because I knew that Dave knew that music so well that was easier. That was like, well, he knows what this music is. So that was less of a stretch.
Right. Now, that song and that sketch, I keep coming back to because it works on so many different levels. That was your kind of baby, right? You're the one that wrote that and took it all the way through. And I could see there's little bits, little droppings in there that indicate someone who really knows their stuff. I think there was a reference to Black Flag in there, Des Cadena or something like that. I seem to recall. You also put that out on a 7-inch on Drag City. Was that after the sketch? Was that inspired?
Yeah.
Okay.
After there's a couple bands I've done on SNL that like after the fact on Drag City, I would just put out a single as that band. And the Crisis of Conformity one has a young picture of Dave Grohl in it. It's hiding in there. It's on the cover, but he's in there. He sent it to me. And there's a picture of me from the 90s, but I was like pretending to be like a hardcore singer. I had my head shaved and but yeah, that whole thing is like, getting to do that on TV. I remember I thanked Lauren for it. It's like a real, it could be on my epitaph, of like that's it's almost like all I ever wanted to do was like that's like a love letter to my whole youth. It's a love letter to hardcore punk, and not just punk, but hardcore. And, also the idea of like, back then, those lyrics were very name specific. They would like name specific politicians. The Dead Kennedys did it a lot. They would do a lot of like mentioning the actual person. Yeah. And,
that's a Ed Meese.
Yeah. Alexander Haig.
So once you do that sketch, how does that conversation go with Drag City? Oh, I'd like to now put out a single to add to the mythology of this. How does it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been doing stuff with them for a while. I've put out stuff with Drag City, and they're friends of mine. So the discussion is barely a discussion. It's very like, hey, can I do this? Okay, how's June? I'll send you the tapes. And then they just put it out. And what's the artwork going to be? And they're incredible with that.
You've got a few different bands. The Crisis of Conformity, I think.
Blue Jean Committee.
Blue Jean Committee.
Yeah.
Most of them seem to be one-offs.
Yeah.
Are there any of those characters that you think have more legs you'd like to explore more?
I did Ian Rubbish, the British one, for a couple of years. Like further, like maybe I would do it when I'm on tour. I'll do it like a couple songs as Ian Rubbish, but I'm a little worried about. This is just me.
Mm-hmm.
This is just me. All respect to all people who, put out music and comedy. I'm a little worried about putting on a wig and then going out there and doing Ian Rubbish and then someone going, what is this? And then someone having to explain to them, oh, it's a sketch he did. And like, it's like too indulgent. It's like, for me, I just can't, I did it enough, did it plenty, but like, I just feel weird about like assuming the audience knows everything I did. For me to go on stage like, hey, everybody, remember, I don't know, that time goes so fast that it's like it's like newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
So at the moment, I feel too rude or like self-conscious to like go out and,
right.
If it was if it was a private party and someone said, will you please do Crisis of Conformity? Sure. But otherwise, I don't want to subject audiences to like,
mm-hmm.
Hold on, everybody. And then I put on my wig. Guess, remember this guy? I don't know.
When you're developing those characters, do you make like a almost a little history of them? Like the guy, Crisis of Conformity, just to understand their personality so you could then kind of imbibe that?
Yeah. But that's kind of easy because I just picture, it's such a reality. There are, all the hardcore people are kind of that age now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still such a fan of those people that I'll just see them online, doing an interview or something like that. And that's just easy. They're, I feel like I kind of know what those people are like. They're my
mm-hmm.
friends.
Yeah.
And they're not unlike me, I'm close to that age, whatever that age is.
So let's talk a little bit about your record collection.
We'll be back after these messages.
Well, hey there, you record nerds. Before you drop any dough on eBay or Discogs, make sure to search for your wish list at AudiofileUSA.com. AudiofileUSA.com has over 42,000 titles in stock and only sells excellent and near-mint vinyl records. Many are decades old and still in original shrink wrap. Dig into AudiofileUSA.com, search by artist, genre, even search by record label, and dig for the deals. AudiofileUSA.com is a family-owned and operated business, and all their records are damn gorgeous. That's AudiofileUSA.com, home of the Holy Grails. And next time you're in a record store, ask them for the Groove Washer by name. The Groove Washer is the best vinyl record cleaner out on the market. I use it daily, and my records look and sound their very best. There is no way I'd put any no-name cleaner fluid on my records. Only the best for cleaning, listening, and long-term storage. Groove Washer is safe, proven, and industry recognized. If your local record shop doesn't carry the Groove Washer, then go to groovewasher.com and use discount code VinylGuide10. We much prefer you buy one from a record shop, but if they don't have it, go to groovewasher.com and use discount code VinylGuide10.
Now we return to the program already in progress.
No limits.
So let's talk a little bit about your record collection, because I believe you probably have quite a collection. Have you been able to keep your records from your youth up until now?
Some, not all of them,
Mm-hmm.
but some from those early days those ones that my parents gave me, ones that I've lost or whatever, I've moved a billion times. I just rebuy them. That's the beauty of it. Like, oh, I guess I'll just get it again. That's easy. But the weird survivor has been CDs. CDs have because I kept not getting rid of them. Now I'm like, hey, these are great. They've survived and they sound great. But I love my record collection. It keeps growing. It's doing great. I'm a real sucker. Like I buy all those reissues. I don't even know what they are. And I'm like, I'll get it. Any box set, you know, I've bought reissues of albums that have been reissued as a fact. I'm like, I have this from 2000, but I'll get this 2020 version. I don't care.
What is it that pulls on your internal strings so you do that? The multiple copies of the same album, multiple reissues?
It's first of all that I love it. I love, unboxing and opening that stuff. But I also feel like I have an agreement with the artist and the record company. So because the artist is like, hey, I went through all my old tapes and I, reorganized the demos and all that stuff. My deal with them is like, then I will buy it. You want me to, I love your music. So if this is what you want me to buy, I'll do it. You want to, you're putting out a remix version of it. Paul McCartney did, he did a, where the mastering is slowed down. I have Ram 1,000, whatever. I have many times, and I'm just like, hey, you did this other version of it. I'll show up. I'm going to show up at the record store, and I'm going to get it. I love the work that they put into it.
So you'll get the remix, the bonus tracks. But if they come out with another one that's almost identical to the one that they released 10 years ago, not so much.
No, I've done it all. I've done it all. I've gotten the Who sellout reissue, and then because I get like nervous that I'm not getting it all, I'll get the LP version and the CD. And the other thing is, like, sometimes Amazon will be like, "This is the deluxe version," and then I'll get it. I'm like, "This is not the deluxe version." But I'll keep it. I think I did that with Sign of the Times. Sign of the Times just did a reissue.
Oh, did you get that 9 LP box set or something?
So I have that, but then like I marked something off wrong somewhere, and I got this sort of almost deluxe thing. And I'm like, I'll just keep it all.
Do you get rid of any records? Do you cull your collection every so often?
I had some doubles, and sometimes I'll give them away. Like I'll give them to a neighbor. There's a neighbor who lives down the street, and I was like, I'll just give him these. He just moved in, so I was like, here, add this to your record collection. But my fantasy is that like when I go back to like, because I have a section of doubles, meaning like this is stuff that I already have. My dream is if I ever get to go back to Chile, I was working there last year, or like Iceland. I'm just going to bring them, whatever, this many, and I'll just give them to a record store there, just to kind of that flow of used records, where someone in Iceland will go like, well, how did they get this? I just want to be able to do that.
Do you seek out first pressings? Do you have that kind of collector gene in you where you do that?
You mean like used records and finding the first pressing of something?
Exactly. Like, no. Even sometimes paying 3 or 4 times the amount of a reissue. That doesn't appeal to you.
No, it's the weirdest thing. That I don't go for, but if there's a specialty of something, that I do pay a lot of money for. So not first pressings, I just feel like I can't listen to them. I'm like, I can't really bust it out. Records, I feel like want to be played. So I don't want to be like putting it in a frame of like this, that's not for me. But if there's like a picture disc of something, or like a double 10-inch, something kind of cool, then I do get it. Like there are, there's also like 7-inch box sets of an album where they have all the singles in it. That I like to get. I like to get like the weird, colorful thing that doesn't fit in my regular shelves.
And you seek that out. So when you go to a record shop, you're like, all right, I'm not even looking at the wall. I'm looking at what's behind the counter.
They'll be like, sometimes they'll have a shelf. There's some record stores that'll be like, they'll have like a sort of display. And it's usually something you notice at first. You're like, oh, wait a minute. What's that? A promo, double gatefold thing that I'm like, what was this for? There's like a Harry Nilsson one I saw for some vampire movie. And the record sort of opens up. It almost looks like his bat wings or something. Stuff like that is kind of like, it's one of those things that I'm like, I cannot walk out of this store without that. That is just too cool.
Do you go to a lot of record shops?
Oh, yes. It's just like a way for me to travel. So if I'm in another city, I don't know where else to go. So I'm like, I'll go to the record store. And even if I don't get something, I just like, it gives me like a feeling of like, okay, that's what this place is like. And meaning this city. And, sometimes I find some crazy great stuff. It's just like it's like a nice activity.
Yeah.
So I do go a lot. And then here in LA, I go to Amoeba all the time. Yeah, I like it. It's comforting.
What are your favorite shops around the world?
For some reason, I'm a big fan of flying out in Auckland, New Zealand, because it had so much personality. Like it wasn't like, it's like almost like going to Italy and getting Italian food, like something about that shop was like, they're like, here's a lot of New Zealand music, and it looked really cool. And I just felt like it was very guest friendly. They're like, it felt like, hey, you're not from here. This is our history. So there's other rock albums and stuff, but something about it was very like guest friendly. And then the Amoebas, there's one up in the Bay or a couple up in the San Francisco area. Those are great. There's just so many, Reckless in Chicago. There's a lot. And there's some also that I'm forgetting, I get caught up in the moment. And sometimes I'm like, this is the best place ever. And now I can't even remember where they were.
Yeah. So when you travel, you make time in your schedule. Okay, this is going to be record store time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'll bring like, I'll either get like a burlap bag or whatever. And if it starts getting heavy, I'll like ship it back. I'll start shipping stuff back. They're hard to travel with. So sometimes I'll do CDs. They're a little easier, or I'll ship some back. But on my trip to Australia and New Zealand, I bought like a flight case, sort of, like DJs use. And I brought that. That's what I used as luggage.
And you seek out local music when you do that, yeah? Like,
always.
Oh, okay.
And I'll ask. I'll be like, okay, what were the big punk bands here? And that was an education for me. I knew very little about the Australian bands, a little bit, but that was great. Each store was very good at like, okay, this is what you need. And,
Yeah. I moved here 20 years ago, and they had a parallel music scene to America. And it's taken me so long. I'm still not all the way up on top of all the different bands, but they've got some amazing acts here. Yeah.
There was like, the Saints, I knew from the No Thanks compilation, of punk. But then I was like, wait a minute, this was like a substantial band with like a real history that like, I don't know. That's one of many that from there, man. Australia is great though, isn't it? Huh?
Oh yeah. It's paradise, but don't tell anyone.
I know. It doesn't matter because even if everyone moved there, there's so much space. I'm like, you guys will never be crowded. It'll never be crowded. They could try all they want, but it would take a lifetime.
There's a lot of space in the middle. You'd have to like hot weather there, and not particularly friendly to records though. You get a lot of warped records.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Have you discovered some of the more recent Australian bands like King Gizzard or Civic or any of those?
King Gizzard, yes. Civic, I don't know.
Okay. Amazing.
Yeah.
Future Forecast is the new album. It is. I could send you a link to it.
Oh, and Emil and the Sniffers.
Oh my God. That was the last show I saw before lockdown. And they've got a new album that they just announced last week.
Oh yeah, I saw that or they had a new video or something. But yeah, they're great. They're great because I'm intimidated by them, which I like. I like being intimidated by a band. And they are like that for me. I'm like, oh man, they're like, they just seem like they really know how to have like a real evening.
Have you seen them live?
No, I haven't. I've seen them on video, but I'm like, oh man.
You got to see it. She comes out at the very beginning of the show. Amy comes out and says, there's 3 rules. Don't touch people in a way they don't want to be touched. Help people if they fall down, and don't be a cunt. Let's go.
Oh, great. Great. God, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and everything's starting to open back up. I see Off is now doing a new album. Everywhere except Australia seems to be open.
It's going to keep moving. Then there'll be something somewhere else, and then Australia will be great. I mean, it's just,
Well, hopefully we'll clamp this down. I'm hoping that we'll maybe have a big day out in 2022. So let's talk a little bit about this this record that you have for RSD. So it was produced by Ty Segall.
Yeah.
And it was just a series of instrumentals that you had or that you purposely made?
No. I just imagined, I like the timbali so much that I was like, I kind of want to do like the kind of like 12-inch record that I would buy in the early 80s,
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like just like a lot of timbali, a lot of bass. And I know everyone says this kind of thing. I just wanted it to be kind of like a dance record, that you just can, it's simple beat. And I wanted to do something. My dream is to do a record of just bass and timbales, but I put some drum kit in it, and Ty Segall really did produce it. And that, like, I am not great at mixing. I'm not great at sitting behind a mixing desk. I'm very I like recording, and then I really want it to be done. Like, hey, we got it, right? So he was really good about getting sounds, and then he did sort of a remix in it. So it's really 2 songs, and he did a remix of the first one. Mm-hmm. But he really did work with tapes. I know that's like, people say that it's better, but he was evidence of like, no, this actually does sound better. So yeah, I mean, I've known him for a while, and I loved working with him, and he was really easy. I brought my timbales. I used a Rickenbacker bass. I used whatever drum kit he had at the studio. Mm-hmm. And I wanted one song to sound like I was a great bass player. It's it's kind of like showing off. But I'm not a great bass player, but I picked out notes that were like, it seemed like I could, very fluidly play. So I just did the one thing over and over that sound, because it's slow, it sounds like purposeful. But I just did that. Although when I was actually recording it, I found it much more difficult. At home, I can really play the bass and, oh man, what an easy instrument. But when in the studio, I really locked up. It's just because it's recording.
You're worried about choking?
Yeah. So, because, so I just did it over and over and just tried to relax. But I was very it's funny. As soon as that, rolling, as soon as that happens, I'm a very different bass player. But I mean, he just had to be paid. I was like, let's do it again and again and again.
You start thinking in your mind, it's like, hey, this sounded good. This is sounding really good. But we're halfway through. It'd be a shame to screw up now. Oh my God.
Exactly what happened. Exactly. And then, because I want to play it safe, I'm locked in this one position. My hand is in this one position on the neck. And then the second time, even more, where I'm gripping it like I'm on a roller coaster. Now I really got to get it right. But it was a matter of, I just had to talk myself out of it. Just keep going, relax.
Do you write songs and maybe, keep them for some future project? Or do you just pretty much make everything bespoke for in the moment?
In the moment. Unless it's for a parody, unless it's hey, we need something for a sketch. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's just in the moment. I haven't, God, I might not have ever done that. Maybe back in the days when I was in a band. I don't think I've ever sat in my living room hey, I wrote a song today. That has that's not me. Other people are great at it, but I'm not I wrote a song, for no reason.
You don't get inspired to write music at any given point. I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, you get inspired to write sketches.
Yeah.
But not music.
It's all comedy based. That's the only time, if it's trying to mimic a style, I'm right there. Mm-hmm. Happy to, I'll hear something in the car and go ooh, I want to do this. When I do stand up, I'll talk about styles of music, styles of guitar playing. That's where I feel most ready to write a song. That comes to me right away. But as soon as it gets serious, I'm like, I'm blank.
You've done sketches on obviously hardcore, the Blue Jean is like a Seals and Crofts 70s yacht rock kind of thing. Is there any genre of music you feel you have yet to write a sketch for, you want to play around with in that fashion?
Yeah. Foreign rock.
Oh, okay.
So like rock from Hungary or Argentina or something. There's a sound, there's a way the singers sing that's very specific to those countries that I've never heard anywhere else. It's sometimes when I'm in another country, someone will play like, hey, this is our rock radio station. And there's a sound to it where it has everything on paper that every other country has. Loud guitar, drum kit. But there's something in the way that they do it that is like slightly different. Mm-hmm. But that's what I'd like to try to parody.
So I'm getting of the age to where the end is closer than the beginning, right?
Yeah, same.
And I'm starting to look at my record collection now and starting to say, okay, I don't have time for all of these. And these are the ones that I would like to focus on or save some room for growth, that sort of thing. But yeah. I'll give you an example. The other day I listened to Sgt. Pepper, and I know it's a great landmark album, but I thought to myself, you know what? That may be the last time I listen to it, because I think I don't want to keep repeating it, and I think I've chewed as much flavor as I can out of this.
Yeah, gotcha.
How do you keep that balance between your favorites and new songs, new artists that you may just be getting familiar with? You can make an agreement with the record itself. You could look at Sgt. Pepper and go like, I love you, buddy. I love you. You're right here on the shelf. I'll be around, but I'm going to go listen to this other thing from this, from a whole genre I've never explored before. So here's Sgt. Pepper right there. I'm like, I'm just going to put on this, Buck Owens. I'm going to put on this Buck Owens album. We're all in the same room. Your family. And I want to hear what this Bakersfield sound is. Listen with me. That kind of thing. Okay. I start talking to my records like my pet. I'm just going to be right here.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere. All right. Fred, thank you so much for coming on the Vinyl Guide. And I've always known that you are a real music aficionado and you go deep. And I could tell by so many of your the sketches and, of course, the products from that. Like, again, Crisis of Conformity. Looking at that record, I know it was put together by someone who, really loved and lived through that period in time in that genre. And again, it's such an honor to have you on the show. And I'm so glad that you are Record Store Day Ambassador 2021. It's not the most normal record store days we've had in history, but at least things are opening up. I want to encourage people to look for Fred's record. It's pretty limited. It's going to be really tough to get because I think that there's about 2,000 made, something like that? Do you know?
I don't know. I have no idea.
It's going to be a tough one, but when you go to the Record Store Day on July 17th, make sure you seek out a copy of this. Very interesting, especially those of you who have an interest in timbales. And maybe this will be the explosion that kicks off the next round of timbale-oriented pop music.
Let's hope. Yes.
Fred, thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, Fred, for coming on the show. And of course, everyone, make sure you pick up a copy, if you can, of Fred's Record Store Day release, Parade Meeting. Again, 3 new tracks on colored vinyl. It's got an etching on the other side. It's available July 17th on Record Store Day. Go to your independent record shop, grab a copy of that, and grab a whole bunch of stuff as well. Celebrate the day and have a happy and safe Record Store Day. Well, that's it for this week's episode of The Vinyl Guide. Thanks again for tuning in. Again, share these episodes. Give us a nice review up on iTunes or whatever. Show your friends how to subscribe to a podcast. It's still very elusive. Not everyone can do it. So show your technically challenged friends how they can use that smartphone of theirs to listen to the Vinyl Guide. And we'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.
That's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Send your thoughts to Nate at thevinylguide.com or follow or tag us on Instagram at Vinyl Guide. Until next time, keep spinning.